you had something?
If you can just add the local government workshop, please.
Very good. Councillor Belford.
Hour, please.
Our place, Councillor Barker.
I want the cost of putting in dams on private property. It's the cost of fees, the cost of engineering, the cost of reports, and the location of them.
Dams, yep. Mr. Mohi.
Is it Manawa?
Which Marae?
Manawa.
Oh, Mana. Councillor Scott. Very good. Okay, thank you. We'll get to that at the end of the meeting. Okay, item 7, affixing of the common seal. And we do have a fair few here. Paul, Mr. Drury, could you actually, just for some of our new folk here, just take us through what we actually do with this particular item each meeting?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, this is for the affixing of the common seal, their land transactions specifically. Most of them on this list, although not exclusively, some of them are in Mike's area of flood and drainage and reserve lands, etc. But most of them are sale and purchase agreements for the leasehold land, that's Napier leasehold land. And they still continue, and there's three or four a week negotiated. And I believe they'll probably continue whilst interest rates are low. It's my view that once interest rates peg up next year, we may see a dropping off of this. Certainly, we have, over the last 18 months, sold 290, or freeholder 290 of these sites back to the lessees. So there's been a lot of activity. This is the final little bit of it, in my opinion.
And just explain, perhaps, also the means at which this does occur. I mean, it's not an open market deal.
No, it's not an open market deal. If a lessee would like to freehold, i.e. not continue to pay their rental payment, then they approach the council and it's valued at a lessor's interest. There's two values in there's a lessee's value, and the lessee's value is because, firstly, the council can't sell it to anyone else. It's got to be sold to the lessee, so it's not an open market transaction. And secondly, the lessee has a right to continue paying rent for 21-year blocks. So council is a little bit tied, so there's a value there. So the lessor's value is determined by our valuers, and that's subject to a valuation report that goes to the lessee. Generally speaking, they're happy with that. It's an independent evaluation. Not very often do we have an arbitration. I think the last one was a couple of years ago, but there is provision for an arbitration if indeed they would like to take it to another independent valuer and they get together and they resolve, so there is a process for that. Generally speaking, the freeholding process is good. The values provided to them for freeholding, or the freeholding valuations, are normally attractive. Certainly they're very attractive if they're in the middle of a 21-year time frame, because of course if they're in the middle of a 21-year time frame, we've got another 10 years at a very low rent. But if they leave it till renewal time, then the valuation can be a little bit higher because the cash flows are higher. So yes, it's not an easy transaction, but I think the lessees understand it and they're always taken through it.
Questions, Councillor Dick?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chairman. Paul, would you have an idea whether these freeholdings are going to current lessees who are intending to stay and continue to own the property but own it in the future in a freehold form, or are they occurring with the sale of a leasehold property to another owner with a contemporaneous freeholding?
Yeah, council is probably a mix of them, to be fair. I mean, we've got a mix of investors in there as well that determine they would prefer to freehold at low interest rates. So there's a mix of people. There certainly aren't too many older people that have been in them for a significant number of years freeholding. It would be more the investor and change of ownership.
Thank you. Just please use your microphones. It's been reminded we're recording the meeting. We need to use the mics. Councillor Scott.
Mr Chairman, 3 short questions on the leasehold, if I may, and one on the heads of agreement. All of these are post the special offer, so there are no discounts on any of these.
There are no discounts on these.
And can we ascertain how many of them are cross leases? They all cross leases?
We can. I haven't got the information with me, but we
so
can.
You can keep an eye on that. And Mr Chairman, if we just have clarification around the effect this has on our sale of the income stream, how is that going to, I certainly don't want every niggle being reported back, but how will that be covered with us in the future so that we know where we are with that? Adjustments to the income from the lease stream.
Yes, Councillor. The arrangement through the sale of leasehold cash flows was that the lessees could still freehold. If they freeholded, then those cash flows would not be available to be paid to the purchaser, and instead we would provide the purchaser with the net present value over the 50-year time frame pertaining to the cash flows for the property sold. Okay, so if you think about it,
I'm just wondering how it's going to be reported back to us through the financial reporting.
It could be the transaction with the purchaser of the cash flows is done on a 6-monthly reconciliation basis. So perhaps council, it could be included in the financial report every 6 months because that's when we summarise it.
Yep, that's fine. Thank you. Can I do my heads of agreement now to come back to that one?
No, we'll come back to it. Councillor Bevan.
Thanks, Chair. My question was pretty much covered off by Councillor Scott's question. That means the capitalisation of the income stream for the next 50 years isn't guaranteed capital because we might have to give some of it back if people want to freehold the properties. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Councillor Barker, do you have a question? Just your microphone, please.
I was just interested in the some of the particulars about some of the items here, like 1.2, willow clearance works in Malaitata River. It's to do with an Esplanade strip. I always thought Esplanade strips were pretty important things, and I was wondering why the council is selling an Esplanade strip.
Mr. Addy?
Yeah.
That's all it reads.
No, we're not selling it. We are securing it because there will be some environmental enhancement work in the removing willows and then planting the strip alongside the Maraitota River.
Right, so this one's to be purchased rather than to be sold.
Yes. Yeah. Well, secured, not necessarily purchased. I mean, it may be that there is no money transacted other than the fencing cost and the survey cost.
So effectively the landowner gets some subsidised fencing in exchange for ensuring that there's a permanent riparian strip alongside the waterway.
Well, thank you for that. But I got the impression that these were all pieces of land that we were selling. But what you're saying here is that the exercise of the seal is for both sale and for purchase and so on. It would be helpful if we could have that distinction made in these things as you read them later. I mean, you staff know, but when I read through it, I just read to me like we were selling an Esplanade strip and my hairs went up the back of my neck.
Okay. Actually, that's a good point. Any other questions in regard to particular transactions? You had one of the heads of agreement.
To get some clarity around the heads of agreement for Access Way, is that for public access or is it for access for shingle management?
Shingle management.
Yep. Thank you.
No further questions? Someone happy to move? We accept Councillor Bevan. Thank you. Seconded Councillor Scott. No further discussion. Put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, no. Carried. Thank you. Item 8. I just remind councillors that we've got a school group coming in at 10, so we'll we'll be stopping wherever we were at that time to deal with that. Quite a neat day, actually, for those young people who are on their way here now. Item 8, recommendations from the Environment and Services Committee. Hand that over to perhaps Mr. Adey. Have you got any comments you wish to add to that?
No, I'd pass it over to Councillor Graham.
As Chairman, good points, Mr. Chairman. Councillor Graham, have you got any comments around that?
That was a high ball. Firstly, I wasn't aware that the recommendations had to come back to a full council, so that was really interesting for me to observe that. We were all present at that meeting except Councillor Barker, and I'm sure he's read the notes thoroughly. I have. So do I just move that these all approved by the council as a block or one by one?
As a block, well, unless there's any questions from anyone, Councillor Belvin.
Just to clarify with the process, would there be minutes of this meeting? When would those minutes be available?
At the next committee meeting of the Environment and Services Committee.
So my question has to do with some of these items were discussed and various commitments were made along the way in those discussions. We don't have those in front of us. So are we in reverse order? If we approve these, how do we know what we're approving?
Sorry, can I just clarify? The minutes will be available generally within a week of the meeting having been held, and those will be sent out as unconfirmed or draft minutes to everyone. These are recommendations for council, so the any actions or anything that came out of the Environment and Services meeting will go on to that, the actions or follow-ups for that committee as a separate item to the following meeting. As far as the resolutions, the committee doesn't have delegation from council to make those decisions on its own, so those have to be adopted or passed by council. So that's why they come to the next council meeting, so that they can be put into effect.
So if, for example, there was a discussion under the climate change update, which here we're just receiving the report, if there were commitments made in that discussion, those are somehow, they'll be reflected in the minutes
and taken forward by the committee.
That committee then does the work program, delivers the work program, as it were. Mr. Mohi.
Yeah, can I also make the point, Councillor, that the items on the Environment Services Committee, as I understand it, are usually on the Māori committee before it goes to this committee, so it gives it sort of a chance for Māori input into what comes before your committee.
So that hasn't happened.
Well, once the year starts, it's officially the Māori committee is informed till next week.
Councillor Barker.
Just two things. One is a procedural issue. I see that the paper that comes from, I'm just getting used to the processes here. I see the process the paper that comes back as a result of the committee comes over the signature of Mike Adey and Liz Lambert. And I would have thought myself personally that if it was the person chairing the meeting, i.e. Councillor Graham, who was leading it, would be the person who would sign up. Just someone might care to explain to me why it's that way sometime. The second point I want to raise is about the future of the Ahuriri estuary management. And I take it from this resolution here that we are committing to engage on the development of a committee for Ahuriri, and the Chief Executive is going to lead this, and we're going to tell the Crown of our decision about this. But what I'm trying to get my head around is how does this dovetail and fit into the Regional Planning Committee, which is responsible for the RMA? Because it seems to me there's an enormous amount of overlap, and if with overlap, there's great potential for conflicting views, and I'm not sure how we're going to resolve those.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the paper to the Environment and Services Committee really set out that process. So this request was a result of the Office of Treaty Settlements and the Crown negotiator for the Mana Ahuriri claim, meeting with key stakeholders in relation to the estuary management being the Department of Conservation, ourselves, Napier City Council and Hastings District Council, meeting a couple of months ago together with the negotiators for Mana Ahuriri, and emphasising really the importance that this particular, the estuary, has for that group of hapu. We, as I explained it at the meeting, we have the Regional Planning Committee, which involves all the treaty claimant groups and settled groups with interests wholly or partly within Hawke's Bay, and they co-govern the natural resources along with this council. But underneath that, or alongside it perhaps rather than underneath, we as a council have also been involved with each of the treaty claimant groups as they go through their settlement processes, meeting with them and where their concerns overlap with our responsibility, coming to agreement with them about issues of concern to them. So, for example, with Ngāti Pāhawera, it was around gravel extraction in the Mohaka River, and we have a separate agreement with them on that. In this particular case for Mana Ahuriri, it's the future well-being and the health of the Ahuriri estuary is their one of their key concerns, where we also have a role to play in that. So the purpose of this committee, while it hasn't been defined yet, and that's one of the things that you've delegated to me to be able to join in discussions on that, it's not to create a statutory document, so it won't clash or collide with the role of the Regional Planning Committee, but this committee, the role would be to promote and advocate the estuary, to discuss collaboratively, to look at perhaps even various development options that may occur within that area. So that's that Mana Ahuriri are represented on the Regional Planning Committee, so they know the role of that committee. They're not intending that this undermine that or duplicate it, but they do want separate recognition of the importance to them of the estuary, and they believe that that's best expressed through a committee, statutory committee.
Mr. Chair.
And to answer the first question,